Hi, Bob. Thank you very much for joining us today. You must be very busy with the release of your new book, The Go-Giver Influencer. In your best-selling business parable, The Go-Giver, and then your follow-up, The Go-Giver Leader, you and John David Mann challenged the conventional wisdom about success. And now you're back with a new and equally compelling story about the power of genuine influence in business and beyond. The Go-Giver Influencer, a little story about a most persuasive idea, tackles the paradox of achieving what you want by focusing on the other person's interests. And no, not in a way that is self-sacrificial, but rather in such a way that all the participants benefit greatly. This results in both immediate and long-term success. Now, Bob, you speak all over the world on topics relating to the Go-Giver, as well as what you call the ultimate influence. And while your total book sales number well over 1 million copies, You're a Man's original book itself sold over 700,000 copies and has spurred an international movement. Your new book, however, The Go-Giver Influencer, might just be your most important book of all. Why do you feel that is, Bob?
Well, I think that first, thank you, Richard, for having me on with you. I really appreciate it. And we felt the time was right for this book. We're seeing a lot of people, and we've certainly all seen this online, although we also see it at social gatherings, family gatherings, wherever it happens to be, where people seem to be on two sides of an issue. And not only are they on different sides, and that's okay, and it's great to have dialogue and to discuss, but that's not really what people are doing. People are arguing violently and viciously, even if just verbally. It's still, there's a violence to it. There's accusations. If you don't believe me, if you don't agree with me, you're a bad, evil person with horrible intent.
That's very true.
We've seen this, and it's getting, and I don't know about in your country, but it's certainly happening, here in the U.S. And John and I really, we're not comfortable with that, and we think it's time to sort of do our part, if we can, to get people seeing that it's a lot more, not only benevolent, but more productive to be able to communicate in a way that we're able to actually influence and persuade in a positive way, as opposed to just make our point and create enemies.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Fair play. Because in your story, Gillian Waters and Jackson Hill are ambitious young business people in the midst of negotiating a business deal that can make or break both of their careers. They're each individual encounter unlikely mentors who guide them to radical, different, yet surprisingly effective ways of achieving their goals. Now, by finding common ground, where there appears to be only irreconcilable conflict. Okay, that sounds good, but how do you do that nowadays, Bob?
Sure, and that really is what we go through. We take the reader through that in the book. It's a business parable, and I co-authored that with John David Mann, who's a fantastic writer and storyteller.
Excellent.
And we wanted to do it in that way so that people could actually kind of be in on this whole thing. And with Gillian and with Jackson, two nice people, both have good intent, and they each have exactly what the other wants and needs. So you would think this is a perfect business marriage made in heaven.
Definitely.
And it turned out to be anything but.
Right.
And the big reason, and we see this so often, Richard, right, is that they were not listening to and trying to understand from the other person's point of view. They were wrapped up in themselves, even with their good intent, knowing that what they were doing was really good work. They were so intent on what they were doing and their own needs and their own, that they just didn't take time to really dig in and discover, what does the other person need? What do they want? What do they desire? What are their fears? What's motivating them? And so they began to, and they each found a mentor. In this story, there were two mentors and two proteges instead of the usual one mentor and one protege. And so it begins by mastering your own emotions. That's the first secret. Master your emotions. And let's face it, as human beings, we're emotional beings.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'd like to think we're logical. And to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty emotion driven. We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those emotional decisions with logic. We rationalize, which, if you break up the word rationalize, it simply means we tell ourselves rational lies.
Very good.
Right? And we do that to justify making a decision we know we shouldn't have made, or losing our cool.
Yeah.
when becoming angry or reactive when we know we shouldn't have. So by the way, we're not in any way saying that you should forego your emotions or deny your emotions. First, that wouldn't make logical sense since we're emotional creatures, but
That's true.
also there's no need to do that. Emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. No. What we're saying is we need to kind of retrain ourselves to be the master of our emotions as opposed to our emotions being the master of us.
Not true.
And that's why, one of my great mentors, Dondi Scumaci, inspired a phrase in the book. What Dondi said is, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car.
Excellent. That's very good. Yeah.
And what one of our mentors in the story said, and this was the judge, and she said to Jackson, her protege, she said, when your emotions are behind the wheel, you're really at the mercy of a drunk driver.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's very powerful.
Right. And so we need to make sure that we retrain our brain, right? We make sure we're able to go into a default mode of calm as opposed to a reactionary type of anger when someone says or does something. So that's the first part.
That's it.
Now, the second part is the second secret, if you will, even though it's really not a secret, is to step into the other person's shoes. Now, we always hear this, it seems easy enough, and yet, when you think about it, we all have different size feet.
Totally.
So we can't necessarily step into another person's shoes. In other words, we don't come from the same belief systems or way of looking at the world, seeing the world as they do.
Very true.
There's often a clash of belief systems, and we tend as human beings, Richard, to think that most other people see the world basically the same way we do. I mean, how can it be anything different? It's all we know.
That's it.
But that's not how it is. So what we need to do is listen, and as Coach George, one of the other mentor, tells Jillian, his protege, don't just listen with your ears, listen with your entire posture, listen with the back of your neck. And what he meant by that is, physically listening with your posture, you're leaned in, but emotionally and even spiritually, if you will, you're listening with the back of your neck. Your entire being is focused on what the person's saying. So you're not listening just to, hear something that you can then use to close a set, right? You're listening to truly understand where this person's coming from.
Yeah.
And the other part, not only do we learn more when we do that, but the other person feels they're being to. And that's a big difference maker.
No, definitely, yeah.
Number 3 is to set the proper frame, or even reset an already set negative frame. What is a frame? Well, a frame is the foundation from which everything else takes place.
Their belief, is it? Their belief, you mean it's like their belief?
Well, I would say this. It's when we begin a conversation, how does that conversation begin in such a way that it sets the stage for a real beneficial and positive interaction?
Oh, yeah.
Now, this could be as simple as a inside-out smile or a great handshake, looking at this person appropriately in the eyes, and that's fine. That's easy enough. Or it could be you're in a group and somebody walks in, so you open up your body language. You open yourself so the person knows you're giving a frame of you're welcome to join this conversation. Now, all that's pretty easy.
Awesome.
But what about when we need to reset an already negative frame?
Ooh, yeah.
Let's look at a couple of examples here, where in front of a prospective customer who is obviously defensive.
Yeah.
And, maybe through asking questions, we kind of find out that the last salesperson she dealt with was very high pressure, and made her feel uncomfortable and so forth. Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to say, Mary, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether or not it's the right answer for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and determining whether it meets your needs. So please know our conversation is for both of us to discover that. And if it does, great. If not, that's okay too.
beneficial to both. Yeah.
Right. And so we've set the frame, not that we are two adversaries, with her having to worry about being sold no matter what. Instead, we're two allies, and we're simply looking out for her best interest. There's no pressure on her.
Okay. You get a solution.
Okay? Yeah. So we've reset that frame.
Okay.
The next, number 4, is to communicate with tact and empathy. This is really where you bring it home a little bit, because without that, nothing else matters. We've got to be able to communicate. My dad has always said, tact is the language of strength.
Oh,
and I really, and I so love that. And yeah, I see tact as a way of being able to communicate an idea to someone that might otherwise be difficult to do. Sometimes, and not that we ever want to do this, but there are times we have to be able to correct someone.
Yeah.
Or critique or constructively criticize, show someone a better way of doing something, whether it's an employee, whether it's a child, whether it's a friend, whatever it happens to be, the difficult customer service representative, whatever. Tact, Richard, allows us to do this in such a way that not only is the person not defensive toward us and resistant to our ideas, but they're open to us and more receptive toward our ideas.
It makes a big difference then. Yeah.
Yep, it's just such a huge difference. and number 5 is to let go of having to be right. Now, when we say that, I don't want anyone to misconstrue that as meaning you don't care about being right, or you're just going to give up no, nothing like that. Of course, you want to be right. You prefer to be right. You'll do everything in your presentation. You'll be prepared. You'll know, of course. What we're saying is we let go of the attachment to having to be right. Now, here's the paradox. It seems like that would make us less influential, but just the opposite. For two reasons. One is, when you let go of having to be right, you go into learner's mode. Okay? You're not as subject to confirmation bias, where you're so stuck and attached to having to be right that everything you hear or read or see either confirms your already held beliefs or biases, right? Or if it doesn't, you simply ignore it, right? And that's all emotional. We don't even realize we're doing that.
Yeah.
And so when we go into learner's mode, that doesn't happen because we're looking to learn. What it also does is it allows that other person to feel much better about us, because they see it's not like we're so stuck on our position that regardless of the facts, we're just wanting to win.
That's it.
So because of that, they're much more likely to drop their guard and do the same thing and be much more open.
That's it.
So actually, when you do that, rather than being less influential, you're actually much more influential.
Oh, that's excellent job. Fair play. Oh, that's good. You say there's one sentence that's guaranteed to prevent misunderstandings. That sounds too good to be true. Is there? How do you post that?
No, it's good, but not too good to be true. It's and this goes back to belief systems again, where and really listening and so forth, and asking the right questions. Because a lot of times, remember, someone says a certain word or a term or a phrase, and we all interpret it based on our belief system. And because of that, there can be conflict. There could be misunderstanding. So let's take an example in the business world. You've got a company that has one of the teams within this company. It's a small unit team. There are 4 people. There's a team leader and 3 others. And the team leader says, hey, there's been a change regarding the project. The client has let me know they now need it as soon as possible. Okay, now that was on a Monday morning that he told them that.
Yeah.
So Wednesday afternoon, 5 o'clock, end of day, he gathers everyone around on his team and says, hey, there's only one person who has the project in. What happened? Well, what did happen? Well, the first person, the one who got it in on their team, and they've been working with this leader for a while, so she knows that as soon as possible means drop everything else and get done within a couple of days. Okay? One of the people, he was with another team where as soon as possible meant you completed what you were doing now, and then you got to the other, right? Now, the third person, she was with a company previously on a team who, when they were told as soon as possible, it meant nothing. You just gave it lip service and kept doing what you were doing. So you've got three different team members with three different definitions of as soon as possible. So how do we make sure a misunderstanding doesn't occur? Well, what if one of those team members had asked the question, hey, Dave, just for my own clarification, and when you say just for my own clarification, that's tact. It's a way of, right, not making the person defensive. Hey, what do you mean by, right now? Dave, when you say as soon as possible, is there a specific day or time you're thinking, boom, or that you have in mind? And he says, yeah, Wednesday afternoon, 5 o'clock, end of day, we need it. So now there's one definition and no misunderstanding. Now you might say, well, wait, why didn't the team leader just say that? Well, I don't know. Why do some people not communicate, the way they should? So what the lesson there too is that as the influencer, we need to know it's our responsibility, right, to make sure. So what the team leader should have said was, if you wanted to say as soon as possible, he said, and just so we're all on the same page, what I mean is by end of day Wednesday, 5 o'clock, we need to have everyone working.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Oh, makes total sense.
That will take care of 99% of the potential misunderstandings that you ever have. Simply ask people to define their terms. Do it in a kind way, a tactful way, and ask them, exactly what they mean by.
That's it, yeah. It's like setting the ground rules. They know what the ground rules are. You know where you're working together, and then it just moves forward and together, doesn't it? So it makes much more sense.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent job. So what about the many very successful people we see who seem to thrive because of their rudeness? You do get some people out there that are just rude, that they seem to sort of be thriving. Is there a sort of a way to deal with them as well?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. If we're talking about being tactful and empathetic and listening, and so what about those people who seem rude and obnoxious? Well, first of all, there's many ways to be successful. Different people could be, but it also goes deeper than that. The people who are successful, who are rude and arrogant and nasty, typically, and I'll say 99 times out of 100, they're not successful because of those traits. No. They're successful despite those traits.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes as human beings, we look at correlation and think that equals causation, and it doesn't necessarily. Okay. Also, it's typically, not always, but typically not as sustainable when you do it that way. But there are some people, Richard, who in some ways are so very talented, or for whatever reason, they're able to, again, despite the personality flaws, they're able to get a certain real deep, high level of success. But that's not very duplicable.
No.
Most of us have got to be able to have people working with us, not against us. For every Steve Jobs who's just so brilliant that despite some of the things they do, they can get, most of us aren't.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's very true. We're all down to earth and normal people. But it's, you say, it's having that, I suppose, natural ability. Some people that can just sort of take off and keep going. And they just, I suppose, they're more focused, I suppose, but rudeness does kick in, which is
and a lot of times, those people in their personal lives don't necessarily have the type of success they have in their business lives too. So,
no, that is very true.
I mean, we don't. That's not what we want. We want them to be good, be happy, and so forth. But I'm just saying that it's it's kind of more than meets the eye when we look at those relatively few ultra successful, sustainably ultra successful people who are really also nasty people. But there are some.
No, it's couple. Yeah, that's it. Very true. And this one sounds very interesting. It's 8 key words that will practically always move a person to your side of an issue. What are these 8 key words?
Yeah, and this is, of course, nothing happens in a vacuum. It's always when you're respectful to this person, and you're patient, and you're kind, and you're tactful, and you're doing the other things.
All the steps, yeah.
Right. But when it's at a point where this person could do for you what you need, and yet they haven't seemed willing at that point, but you've really kind of worked this in a real benevolent way, so they feel good about you, and they kind of like, the 8 key words are this: if you can't do it, I'll definitely understand. If you can't do it, I'll definitely understand. And what you're doing is you're letting this person know that, while you're confident they can, while you believe they can, you're letting them know that they are more important than the thing itself.
Makes sense.
You're also giving them that out or back door, so they don't feel right. And now, by the way, what you can do is after you use those 8 key words, you can pause for a moment and then follow that up with, if you could, I'd certainly appreciate it. Oh, and that's,
Excellent job. Fair play. But based on everything you've been saying, Bob, it's surprising you say compromise is typically not always the answer. But isn't compromise everything?
Well, there's a time and place for everything, and there's certainly a time and place for compromise. But no, we don't want that to be the first option that people take. Why? Well, compromise, and one of the mentors, George, in the story tells his protege Jillian, and he's joking about this, of course, but he says compromise comes from the Greek word meaning nobody gets what they want and nobody's happy. And so obviously that's not really the definition, but it might as well be, because that's pretty much what it is. Compromise, by the very nature of the thing, Richard, is lose-lose.
Yeah,
true. Both people give something up in order to sort of appease the other person, okay? Again, is there a time and place for it ever? Sure there is, but that's not the option that's most desirable, nor should it be the first one. Rather than compromise, we want people to collaborate.
Right.
Collaboration is what takes 1 + 1 = 3. It's when you find a way to help each party get what they want through mutual understanding and dialogue and advancing the conversation. And that's much more desirable than is compromise.
All right, yeah, definitely. Oh, excellent, fair play. Now, one of the biggest issues many of us have today, it's a very busy world, and how do you say no to requests that's sort of like effective and kind when you're trying to say no to somebody?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I always love talking about that because it's so important to be able to say no, because let's face it, we're all very busy.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of requests being made of us. I think everyone does.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And as much as we'd love to please, and people say, well, yeah, that person's a people pleaser. Well, there's nothing wrong with being a people pleaser. It means you want to please people. That's good. But when it's not productive is when it takes away from you being productive, and when you find yourself doing things you really don't want to do, and things that don't, and so we need to be able to say no a lot more than we say yes, so that we can say yes when it's proper and productive to do so. But we need to do this in a way that both honors the other person and makes them feel good about themselves and honors our own boundaries. I've seen different ways of people teaching how to do this, and while I certainly don't want to disrespect anyone, I think there's ways that are taught that really aren't productive. And I'll kind of review those real quickly.
Yeah.
The first is, you often hear, no is a complete sentence. And I really feel badly when I hear this, because I see people nodding their head in oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I think to myself, really?
Yeah.
That's what you're going to do? Somebody asks you to do something like maybe serve on a committee. And it's a compliment that they've asked. They obviously feel you're a person who can bring value. Now, if you don't want to do it, you shouldn't do it, unless there's some compelling life or death reason. But assuming not, no, you shouldn't do it if you don't want to. But they ask, and are you really just going to say no? Of course you're not. First, it's rude. Secondly, you're going to turn that person who's a friend into an enemy, and they're not going to ask you to do anything. And you might want to do something eventually with that person. But the biggest reason you're not going to say no like that is because it's contrary to your values of treating people respectfully.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think that's a good way. Now, I've also heard people say, well, just kind of fib a little bit. Well, I would, but I don't have time. Well, the challenge, in my opinion, with that is you're kind of fibbing to yourself, because it's not that you don't have time. It's that you really don't want to do the thing. As human beings, we don't have time. We make time to do that which we value. What it is, we value not doing it and the other things we could be doing, as opposed to doing this thing. So, no, we don't feel good when we know we're fibbing.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're saving someone's feelings there. We're doing it for ourselves. Now, but here's the other thing. This person is used to people saying they don't have time. And they know how to answer that in a way that they can persuasively show you where time is probably not an issue. So now you're in a position where you either have to admit that you were really just fibbing and because you don't want to do it. They're going to be kind of ticked, rightly so, and you're not going to feel very good. Or in order to save face, what do you have to do? You have to do the thing you don't want to do. And I don't suggest that either. So here's a way to say no that will just make life so much easier for you. Okay. And it simply sounds like this. Thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to be asked.
Oh, nice.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you can say it a little bit differently according to your own style. It might be, oh, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I choose to do, please know how honored I am just to be asked. You can put it into your, but the principle is basically there.
Yeah.
So what you've done is you've said no, but you said it so politely and so tactfully and kindly. You honored them. You let them know you're honored, but you didn't make an excuse.
Yeah.
You didn't give them something to hold on to and answer. You just basically said that you choose not to do it. It's not something you want to do. Now, if they kind of one time try to, coerce you, oh, come on, we really need, right? You just listen respectfully. You don't interrupt. You just listen and your energy is just very neutral or kind, but no look of defensiveness. And once they finish, you say, oh, I appreciate it. I'd rather not, but thank you so much again. Boom. And you just wait that out one time, and I'll tell you, it's going to set you free, because for the rest of your life, you're going to be training and retraining people that they can always ask you, but that when you say no, the answer is no.
Oh, excellent job. Fair play. That's brilliant. That's the core principles to the books. It's all in there in the influencer. So what was the inspiration behind the influencer in the first place?
Well, I had a book out, a how-to book called Adversaries into Allies, which really goes through all of these things of how to be influential and persuasive and be able to. And John and I both thought that, if we could take the basic principles from it, and then, of course, John's such a wonderful storyteller that make it really interesting through a story of, Jillian and Jackson and the two mentors, and there's an animal thing in there for animal lovers will really like this book, because a couple of the supporting players are animals, and it was just a lot of fun. John's always a joy to work with, and so it was just a really, really good collaboration. We're very excited about this one.
Excellent job. Oh, very good. Fair play. So it was 2007, the first Go Give. I got it actually. Yeah, the Go Give that came out, wasn't it? Was it 2007?
The very end of the year, I think December 27th, 2007. Yeah. So 2008 is when it kind of hit the bookshelves. So we're at about 10 years.
Fair play. Brilliant. Yeah, it's amazing. Full set of service. It's an excellent job.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, I'd like to thank you, Bob, again for all you spending the time today with me today. It's been very kind of you, very gracious of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You're a great interviewer and a fantastic guy, and I really appreciate being on your show.
Oh, thank you very much, Bob. Wish you all the success in the future and any future projects you do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, mate. All the best. Thank you very much.